Thank you for joining us this week on IPWatchdog Unleashed. We have a conversation with Ted Wood, and Ted is, well, he's a rare breed, really. He is a former military officer. I'm not sure you can ever say former. So he's a retired military officer. He is a business leader with 40 years of experience, and he is a patent attorney. So Ted, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here.
So, and thank you for your service, number one. And maybe we could go down that path. How do you characterize yourself? Because, I think about some of the folks that I know that have served, and they say, well, once a Marine, always a Marine. Once you're in the Army, you're always a member of the Army. You're just not active.
That's right. It's the same way. I still think of myself in a lot of ways as a military officer. From time to time, people who meet me say, yeah, you looks like you spent a lot of time in the military.
And you did, right?
I did, 24 years.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that journey. How did you decide to get into the military? And then make it a career, really?
Yeah, I did not intend for it to be a career. My father and all of his friends were former military in the Army. I'm from Fayetteville, North Carolina, right there at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They all said, hey, do ROTC in college. I wasn't interested. But then it became, well, that's an easy A. And so I took ROTC. I received a scholarship, figured I'd do 4 years after undergrad. Near the end of that 4 years, Air Force said, hey, well, why don't we send you back for your master's degree? So you owe us an additional 2 years. So that turned into 6. Before I knew it, it was 10 years, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's funny. That's a great story. I tell people, because sometimes people ask, like, well, I would love to do what you do. It's like, how did you do it? I say, one, don't ever consider following in my footsteps because so much people like us who, business owners, entrepreneurs, and I think the military is a great training ground for this. It's one foot in front of another.
Yeah.
And then you with every step, there's going to be opportunity.
Yep. And
there'll be things you want to avoid, of course, but there's always opportunity. And it is this almost like, and I'm getting chills as I'm thinking about this, right? Because and maybe it's because I'm starting to get old, I'm getting reflective. But it is this like chaotic walk through life. And I mean chaotic like in the chaos theory. You never know exactly what's going to happen, and you just evaluate and you make good choices. You surround yourself with good people. And is that sort of, that sounded to me like what you were describing? This wasn't a path you thought you were going to do, but 24 years later.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, my intent was 4 years. When I was an undergrad, I hadn't really thought beyond that initial 4 years. But I was glad I did that because of the training I received, and the people I got to work with, the opportunities I received, and being able to go back to school. And actually, I sort of got bored later on and decided to operate a business. And that's how long story, ended up in law at about the 14-year mark, took an exit bonus. Mm-hmm. I had not counted on that, but the opportunity to start a business came along. I figured, hey, I'm going to try this out.
So you were 14 years full-time.
Yep.
And then 10 years in the reserve?
10 years in the reserve.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Again, well, thank you, sir, for your service. It's great. So what were you doing in that first? You were doing science and engineering.
I was. Right? I was a nuts and bolts.
For the Air Force, right?
Yeah, nuts and bolts engineer. Satellite communications initially. In Space Division in Los Angeles, working with some of the premier satellite communications experts. Did that for 4 years and then went into electronic warfare that I actually loved. Got to work with electronic intelligence, signals intelligence. We were sort of the guys that ensured that pilots came home once they were doing their air-to-air missions because we had to know the air-to-air threats that they faced and be able to identify those threats based on signal theory. So that was fun stuff.
So you're an electrical engineer.
I am.
Yeah, I am too. And I hear you talk, and I'm thinking, like, all those classes that I probably, well, I can't say I should pay more attention in, because I did, and I still struggled. They're not easy classes. Electrical engineering is not for the faint of heart.
It is not. Yeah, and in fact, one of my first what we call TDY, temporary duties in the Air Force. I had graduated and done a lot of signal processing and studied discrete Fourier transforms and all that. In undergrad, I thought nobody ever uses this stuff. And the first place I went, the antenna farm in Sunnyvale, and a young gentleman walked out and he was talking about the different Fourier transforms that they apply to be able to focus on various targets and direct the antenna. And I thought, this guy has to be one of, some sort of expert. Turns out he was a young sergeant who had applied, who would learn these things on the fly. And I'm thinking, my God, this is the smartest person I've met who actually uses this stuff.
Yeah.
It was so impressive.
It's funny that you say that, because I always get really irritated when I hear people say, oh, nobody uses algebra. When you're an adult, you're never going to use algebra. When you're an adult, you never use geometry. And I just think that comes from people who really don't understand algebra or geometry. Yeah. You use geometry all the time, right? I mean, like, you drive, you park your car, right? I mean, it's most people probably don't realize it, but when you're making that turn and you're trying to make sure you don't bump into the car next to you or the pole in front of you, you're using those spatial relations, and that's all geometry.
Yeah.
And if you play pool, for God's sake, how could you ever play pool and not know geometry?
Yeah, yeah.
And the same for algebra, right? Maybe not as directly, but none of the rest of the stuff happens or makes sense if you don't understand algebra. But I think the lack of kids really understanding and learning algebra is why they can't make change. If the cash machine doesn't tell them exactly how much to give you, they just can't do it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny you should mention algebra, because in junior high, so I was one of the jocks in junior high school, and my first algebra class I got a D. And my algebra teacher was good friends with my father, and she said, Teddy's in here playing with the young girls, he's not paying attention. And my father made me stay home that summer and go to summer school. Mm-hmm. And because I was angry, I decided I'm going to show him. And so the same class that I had gotten a D in, I was basically weeks ahead of the class, got an A+, and learned that I had a knack for math. But for that, I probably would have continued long, just kind of not doing my work, but I ended up loving math as a result of that experience, and that's something that always came easy.
That's a great story, and if it wasn't for skill at math, I never would have made it as an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
And because I will admit, I was a little young to have gone to college, not super young, but I was a little young. Didn't really understand the big picture, what calculus was all about until later, until it's almost too late to make a difference in your college career at that point. And but I could do the math, and I wasn't getting the big picture of the science, And then with one exception, and this is going to surprise nobody, it's software. I could write software. I loved software, and I would be a computer engineer today if I went to school literally just a couple years later than I did, because I went to Rutgers and they didn't have a computer engineering program. And if you wanted to do that, they say, okay, well, go be an electrical engineer and take all the computer electives, which is what I did. And then I think it was the year I graduated or the year before I graduated was when they first offered a computer engineering. And I probably shouldn't say that because that's going to date me a little bit.
Just a little.
Just a little. But so how did you make the transition from doing what sounds like heavy duty signal electrical engineering, signal processing, to software?
That was a long trip, and that didn't start until I was well into patent law. I always liked software. Took all the Fortran programming courses in undergrad, and but I was always an electrical engineer by heart, with the keen interest in electricity, specifically. But then but software became challenging. I've always been kind of the adrenaline junkie that liked the stuff that seemed beyond my grasp.
Yeah.
And software had always been fascinating, and I continue to be fascinated by that now, and I'm surrounded by some of the top software engineers in the country even now, and love watching their minds tick and look at the products that they produce, and everything that we do is controlled by software now.
Yeah. So this will surprise nobody, but when I was in electrical, I tried to stay away from electricity because I kept getting shocked, and I just don't think I took it, obviously didn't take it seriously enough, because you could go and spend your whole life as an electrical engineer and never get shocked. But I just seemed to like draw the electricity from the wall into my body. And so that explains a lot probably. But then I got doing the software and just really loved it. I loved the long hours. We didn't have computers ourselves where you could program on.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go to the university computers they had made available for engineers. And they were such load on those machines during the day. So we would go like at midnight.
Wow.
And we would program from midnight to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes late, if something was due, we were walking out as the janitors were walking in for the 6 a.m. shift, and it was just fun. It was exciting. And Fortran, I haven't heard anybody mention Fortran in forever, but that was, I think, the first language that they taught us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to one-up you on the age part. Yeah, when I learned software, so you had to get your program right, and then you had to learn to load your stack of cards in a key punch machine.
Okay, so. I didn't. Okay, so you are. I was wondering, you're a little bit older than I am, because I did not have to do that.
Yeah, no fancy keyboards, no monitors, and that kind of stuff. We all stood in line. You go to the lab. You hope your cards are stacked properly. Because that was half of the challenge, and then your program running correctly was the other half. So let me ask you this as we transition. I want to transition into how you got into the law and that sort of thing. But one of the things that always interests me is the story about how prepared engineers were for law school. Because you go to law school and you look around, and there's a lot of people that really struggle with law school. Yeah.
And to me, it was like, well, this is English. I mean, I can read this. I can understand what's going on here in ways I couldn't really, you had to really struggle as an electrical engineer. And then the thing that surprised the hell out of me was, and maybe you had this experience too, coming also from an engineer and a military background, people just not doing assignments.
Yeah.
And, showing up and it's due today and they don't have it, and then they got to negotiate with the professor to try and get it in late or whatever like that. It was like, as a electrical engineer, going down this path, and this is what brought it up with the key card story you were just saying, is we would turn in the programs we worked on, and if they didn't compile, it was a 0.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that were missing one comma or one extra space, or a parentheses was supposed to have been a hard whatever the case might have been, that was you could have got 99.99% of it right, and if it didn't compile, it was a 0.
Yeah.
And if it was 1 day late, it was 50% off. If it was 2 days late, just don't even do it, because it's a 0.
Yeah.
And so it always shocked me that people came to graduate school, law school, without understanding that. And that probably had to irritate you even more. I mean, coming from the military background.
Well, it did, and it helped in a lot of ways. I did have to. So I sort of backed into the law school thing. When I left the military, I was going to be a business person. As a fallback plan, I had 2 alternatives. One, I was going to be a government contractor. Had already interviewed for government contractor jobs. Plan C was law school. My wife at the time was studying for the LSAT, and so had her books laying around, and I was looking through those, like, oh, this is interesting stuff, but had not really thought about a career in law. So my business didn't work. The concept was just faulty. I was not interested in being a government contractor, so I took her books. She decided not to go to law school. She went to graduate school in education instead. I took her books. I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, studied for the LSAT. And only place I wanted to go was University of Dayton, which was right down the street, but had not prepared for law school. But I did have the discipline. And so I took classes on, being a successful first-year student in law school, but the discipline from the military helped me tremendously because I was an early bird. So when I started law school, I was chit-chatting with the Career Services Office, young lady who was also early, and she was telling me about opportunities for NCR. They were looking for first years in patent law. And although a lot of other students had better numbers than I did, says, hey, they're looking for a polished resume, et cetera, et cetera. When I interviewed, the person I interviewed with said, hey, we know that you're a military officer in leadership, and because of that, you have the intellectual muscle. Those are his words. To get the job done, and that's how I ended up being a first-year law student, also working in-house at NCR as a patent intern.
Yeah. And the perseverance too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't give up.
Nope. That's not in there.
There's a task.
That's not an option.
Right. There's a task to be done, and you work until the task is done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder whether the younger generation gets that. I don't have a lot of hope for the millennials, but I think that whatever group comes behind Z, and then I think Alpha is the next two. They seem to be maybe a little different.
Yeah. Back in our day, you had to. The only way to do it was hard work.
Yeah.
I was used to coming in early in the morning. You didn't learn something, or you didn't have a comfort level with something. You just put in the extra hours until it felt right.
Right.
And that's the way I do it. Today, unfortunately, I don't know any other way.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it either. In high school, too, I went to an all-male high school, Christian Brothers Academy in Lincroft, New Jersey. And they would have the teachers would stay late, not every day. Different teachers would stay late different days. And if you were struggling in a subject, you stayed late.
That's right.
Yeah. You came in early. Some of the faculty that were more morning people, we were bussed in. I was bussed in for probably 45 minutes away, but the bus ride then, it's like an hour and a half with all the stops and everything like that. And get on the bus at like 6 a.m. and we would be at the school at like 7:15 to 7:30 at the latest, so it would be an hour and a half, sometimes even a little bit more before school would start. And, there was always a brother around, or some of the teachers would come in early. And, I wonder, hopefully that stuff still goes on. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just getting too old.
Yeah, it's. I think kids today are used to stuff happening instantly. For me, it's. I know it's going to happen. But you used the term earlier, perseverance and persistence. There are just no other options. You got to get it done.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't happen fast.
Yeah.
And so just got used to that. And you have to have that kind of attitude if you're going to survive in business, in your own business.
No, that's absolutely true. It is funny that you say that, and I probably shouldn't tell this story, but Renee doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can tell the story. So recently, she asked me, did you get that done? And it was relating to the business. And I looked at her and I said, when have I ever, in the entire time that we've been together, missed any deadline on anything? And she said, you're right. That was not exactly what I meant. What I was trying to determine is whether you were going to need to work this afternoon, because it was a weekend and it was due on Monday morning. And actually, it was this podcast. It was this, and it goes public at 4 a.m. on Monday, which, gets early Monday for Europe. We have people listening in Europe. So I always want to hit that. So that means it's got to be done by Sunday evening, right?
Okay.
And so it was Sunday afternoon. She's like, did you get it done? And I'm like, of course I got it done. Otherwise I'd be down there right now. We're working on it. But it is a different way that people look at the world.
Yeah. My sons see me sometimes leaving before everybody started working remotely. And I was, I started out as a young first year at Pillsbury Winthrop, and my sons would see me sometimes leaving at midnight, heading into the office because I was in the military. I was a reservist while I was at first year at Pillsbury Winthrop. So I'd be leaving at midnight, heading to work, and they're still watching TV from the day before.
Yeah.
And so I've had my 2 or 3 hours of sleep. I'd go in, do my work, leave at 6 o'clock, head to the Pentagon, come back to the office, day in, day out, year in, year out, and they just never got it. And I don't know any other way to do it.
No, but that's why you're successful, and there's some people that just, and nothing wrong with them, they want to live a different life, but they're not going to be business owners.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but I always like getting the story of people who are that type of person, the business owner who's willing to do everything, or in your case, a military officer. What rank did you leave with?
Lieutenant Colonel.
That's what I thought. So you were very successful in that career, and you've been very successful. Obviously, you worked if your first job was with Pillsbury, you were doing something right in law school and really paying attention.
Yeah, well, it lucked out. I got the first. So NCR gave one internship to University of Dayton. I lucked out. I just happened to be coming early in the morning. Somebody told me how to prepare for it. I lucked out and got it, and I did that the entire time I was in law school. So, that was the one area that I excelled in. The highest grade in the class. All stuff related to patents.
But don't you think the harder you work, the luckier you get?
I hear that, and I use that all the time, and almost daily. That's just the way it happens. The harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. But that's the story of my life. So I lucked out and was able to, having done NCR, I had my choices of places to go when I came to D.C., where my sons were living with their mom. That was a great experience.
NCR actually stands for, or once upon a time stood for, National Cash Register, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But it's been a minute since they did that kind of line. What kind of stuff were you working on with them? E-commerce, early e-commerce applications, optical carriage read technologies, those kinds of things. So is that how you started getting over into the software sphere?
It is, and that's how I learned to appreciate patent prosecution. The people that I learned to draft claims from, were very regimented, and you need 3 sharpened pencils, a dictionary, a blank piece of paper. Don't even think about this claim until you can recite this invention by heart. You have to be able to tell that to yourself before you write the first word. Every word you write in a claim, you have to look it up in a dictionary. And that's kind of how I learned that process.
That's great, because I don't know a lot of people follow that process. That's the way I do it.
Yeah,
is I have to know the invention before I write.
Yeah.
So I spend my time trying to go through the prior art, figure out what's going on and what is the nugget that I think we're going to be able to get, and then I got to define that nugget.
Exactly.
And then I start writing the claims.
Yep.
And I also think that the most useful tool for a patent attorney is and nothing wrong with a dictionary, you got to use them, but a thesaurus.
Yeah.
Because how often have you had this, and like I don't practice at the moment. I focus on IPWatchdog full time, but when I was practicing, Renee would walk by and I'd be sitting there staring out the window, looking up, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm working.
Yeah.
And like, what do you mean you're working? It looks like you're daydreaming. It's like, I'm trying to find the word for this.
Yes.
And the word that I have at the moment is A, and the word that I'm thinking about is B, but neither are precisely correct, because it's got elements of A and it's got elements of B, but it's something different.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she's like, "Okay, well, let you get back to that." But that's the job, right?
Yes,
is to figure
it
that
is.
exact precise word.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it would take hours to come up with that precise word. I remember one set of claims I was drafting, and I was trying to find this term, and I had looked in a thesaurus and a dictionary, and I came up with this term called monotonically increasing, and now I look back at that and laugh, but it was a precise way to explain what was happening in that invention. And had I not spent that time, like you just said, kind of sitting there thinking about it, looking this word up, that word, no, that doesn't quite do it. But that's the way I learned to draft claims. Yeah. There's no way around that.
Yeah. No, there's not. And one of my longtime friends, he was an examiner for many, many years. He passed away about a month or so ago. He was one of the old timers. He was actually the guy who issued the first MRI patent. His name is Kyle Howell. And so I heard a lot of stories from like the old time examiners from him and from people he introduced me to. And there was this one story he would tell, and he's like, he got this because he worked in the medical device area, and there was somebody had come up with a tool and a process for using the tool that created a certain incision, and because of the shape of the incision healed quicker. Okay. And he's reading this claim, and they use the term ogive. And he's like, well, what is ogive? I mean, that's not exactly. So he went and he looked it up, and he says, damn if that wasn't exactly the perfect word for the shape that they were trying to describe and showed in the drawings. And he said he always admired patent attorneys that did that or could do that, because the words really make all the difference in the world, and to the exclusion of everything else, that was ogive, and it made it easy for him to allow the claim because there was no prior art. Yeah. There was no prior art that was relevant.
Yep. Yeah. So, I remember those days. I had a book. It started out as a sheet of paper, but it grew into a book of terms that I used in claims, and terms that I saw in claims that other people drafted, longitudinally extending, all these ways that you describe things. And that was one of my most prized possessions, is this book of terms. Yeah. I just, in those days, just kind of wrote something in that every day. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's transition a little bit, or maybe we just take another step down this path, right? Because you are doing currently a lot of software. You're doing a lot of AI. And, before the camera started rolling, we were joking around a little bit about, early AI. We didn't know it was AI, but it really, really is AI. I mean, by today, people would understand it to be the probably first generation of AI. So you've seen an awful lot. Like, where do you think, and we can go in and color backwards to fill in the gaps, but where do you think we are today with these technologies in their development?
I think we are sort of at a crossroads because there's a lot of attention. I mean, everywhere you look. I mean, in the last week, probably most of my larger clients, and even many of the smaller ones, but especially all of the larger Fortune 100 clients, I've seen articles about how AI is transforming their business. And every social media site, every place you look, every article contains AI. There are a lot of stories on LinkedIn about AI and patent drafting. But I don't think there's any way to get away from the original skill set of claim drafting and writing applications, understanding the invention. So I think the crossroads where we are is learning to use AI to enhance the way we do patent law instead of letting those tools do the job for us. And I've heard people say before, and I agree with this, that AI is not going to replace anyone, any lawyer, but other lawyers who know how to use it effectively may end up doing that. But I think there are so many choices for different tools and different ways to use them. It can be mind-boggling.
Yeah, it can be. So I agree with that. I don't think, certainly for guys like us at our stage in our career, AI is not going to replace attorneys. And I'm not sure that it ever will in our space. In the way I study the federal circuit very closely, and I can't really predict what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So how in the world could AI predict what the federal circuit's going to do?
Yeah.
You know, the only thing I know for sure is that whatever the federal circuit sees in the next patent they review, it will not have been enough disclosure and the claims were not correct. You know, and they won't exactly tell you why. They'll just tell you,
right.
You know, and so how is AI ever going to deal with that kind of uncertainty, which hopefully at some point leaves the system? But it is what it is, and it's job security, frankly. And I think the attorneys that have something to worry about are those folks that are doing like form work.
Yeah.
You know, like writing basic contracts, landlord tenant type stuff, maybe even wills, trusts, estates, because most people that don't have so much money that they need to have a genius draft in their will, you know. And but for us, I think it's pretty safe. But I do definitely agree that if you're not using AI on some level now, there are many of us who are, and they're just going to be more efficient. They're going to be better.
Right.
They're going to find that right word that you don't find.
That's right, and I think that's where they come in and are helpful. So for me, that part that we talked about, understanding the invention, back in the day, everybody had a book on their shelf: electromagnetics, signal theory. Today, this stuff is so old, textbooks seem outdated, and then you could look stuff up online at a website. But now with AI, you can use ChatGPT or any other generative AI tool and look this stuff up instantly. And so now that leaves us to do some of the things that make that patent application more robust or more likely to withstand that 101 challenge when it's asserted, or when it's when it's monetized, or when it goes before the PTAB or the district courts. So we can think a lot more about those things. I don't think AI is going to replace that thinking, but it'll allow us to get there faster.
Right.
And spend more time focusing on that.
So I think the people who are most at risk are going to be the folks who have been drafting in India and elsewhere, not just India, but India was for more than a minute was the hotbed of outsourcing.
We had that opportunity. Folks were approaching us. As a small business owner, I am bombarded with every legal tool there is on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to have applications drafted for $300 in India. I've years ago looked into that. I can't do that.
So there for a while it was also the searches, and they probably still do searches over some searches in India. Although I think that's probably with AI going to be coming to an end, because the AI searches I've seen so far are already really quite good.
Yeah.
And certainly better than anything and I can say this, and I'm not saying that there's not quality capable of coming out of India, but the stuff I saw coming out of India was not good on the search area particularly. And I would ask people, it's like, well, why are you doing that? And one person told me one time, it's like, well, if the search is crap, it's so cheap, I can just have them redo it. And I'm like, what? That's good when you know enough about the space to know, okay, well, you didn't find something I know you should have found, so I can't rely on this search. But often you're doing a search because you don't know if you knew that space, you wouldn't need the search done, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just think that's playing with fire. And the one thing that I saw one time, the example, I've always used it because it's so perfect. We had a independent inventor many years ago literally invent a hog trap for feral pigs, for hogs. He was from like Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, in that area. And in the South, there is just a gigantic problem with these feral hogs. They're everywhere, and they're big, and they're nasty, and they're invasive, right? So he came up with, and they're smart enough to be out away from people when you're looking for them, right? So you got to put the traps in spots that are not convenient. You know, you're not just pulling up on the side of the road and dropping them. And these hogs can get, I may exaggerate, but I have in my mind that can get up to 800 or 1,000 pounds. I mean, they're gigantic. However big they get, they're gigantic.
Yeah.
They, by any stretch of the imagination. So you can't just have like a trap that you would trap a raccoon in, Right. So he came up with this big, huge apparatus, like gigantic, like with steel welded and everything. And it was round, so he could roll it off the truck and roll it to wherever he needed to put it. So it was super strong. It was very heavy, but it was easy to maneuver because of the design, because of the geometry.
Yep, there you go.
And so we wanted to do a search. So we did a search on this, and it was done by an outfit from India, and they came back with nothing relevant. And all of the stuff that they came back with were related to construction device, because there's something called a pig in the commercial construction area, and it's a junction box for, and I think I'll get this right, for plumbing and that sort of thing. The junction where everything comes together is called a pig, and it's because it can whine and squeal when the air gets in it.
Oh, interesting.
So it sounds like it's a pig. So that's what, colloquially, it's called a pig. It probably has a different, more fancy name. But so what they did is they looked at hog trap, and then they'd say, okay, well, what's a hog? It's a pig, and all the things that they could think of that were relevant, and came up with this construction junction that had nothing to do at all with the invention. And it's like, Now, I think AI does a much, much better job. So I think
unquestionably,
the outsourcing, the folks that, particularly if English is your second language, or whatever you're searching in is not your primary language, I think those people are at real risk, because AI has already far surpassed them.
Yeah. And I know many of them now are using AI. I mean, many of the search reports that I see, from these quick knockout searches, now are for those that use AI are leaps and bounds beyond where they were even a year ago or 2 years ago. Yeah. It's
almost like if you're not paying attention every quarter, there seems to be updates to these tools every quarter. And it's hard to pay attention that quickly, that soon, but I think the best advice I can give people is if you're not kicking the tires right now, if you're not starting to use it, you're going to be behind the scenes, behind the eight ball rather, because as these changes happen, if you're already using it, then it's the delta is much less to start to use an improved version.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we started using, so I formed my own firm in 2016, and I think within a couple of months of opening, quote unquote, Wood IP, we had the fortune of meeting Charles Mearhorn, who is one of the founders of TurboPatent. And actually, he wanted to meet my technological wizard, Dr. Mark Dandon, who now was an associate professor at Carnegie Mellon in their computer engineering department. So Mark was part of the beta testing for TurboPatent. So we'd use it, we'd have monthly meetings with their engineers. Again, before it was called generative AI, but just doing a lot of the mechanics. And so we got accustomed to trying these tools out then. And eventually, they started producing shells for office actions, turning those shells into Word documents with carefully formatted headings. And that was 2017, 2018. But by that time, we were out of the beta testing, so now we have to pay for a subscription. Yeah. So tools were very expensive. But and then into the 2020s, we work with a lot of strategic partner firms because we're a small firm. I rely on a lot of other firms that even Nixon and Vanderhei. So we rely on them to. I treat them as my own partners. So we got used to kicking the tires, and now over the years, every free trial that comes along, we test it out. I took Harity and Harity's Minority Firm Incubator class. Paul Harity was the first person I saw use a generative AI tool to draft patent applications, and I was fascinated. And so I'm afraid not to test these things out, because my fear is that one morning I'll wake up and we'll be completely irrelevant.
Right.
And the expertise that we have, it doesn't matter if we have, my average professional has 30 or 40 years and, they'll form examiner. If we missed a step and now we're so far behind, my fear is that, we'll be outpaced by some of the other firms, larger firms that know how to use these tools more effectively.
Yeah, and you're not just going to be outpaced because of quality, I think. It's going to be cost, too. You're going to be able to, with these tools, get to much better quality for less. And the companies I talk to, they were well aware of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that a lot of them are starting yet to want discounts, or that may not be the right way to say it, but that's coming.
It's being hinted. I mean,
yeah.
So my team, we're former examiners. Some were in house. I actually started in house, but we've been at AmLaw 100 firms, smaller firms, and so I still have a lot of buddies who are in house of counsel now, and it's being hinted at. That we'll laugh it off, but it's right down the road.
Yeah.
And so we have the opportunity now to where we're working with one of our clients who's already an expertise in the software innovation space, and are looking at tools not from the standpoint of speed, but to help us get to enhance productivity and quality and consistency, but using the same skill sets that we use to learn patent drafting, because the way you write an application is different than the way I draft it. And, I can tell you, you can't force tools on your attorneys. You can suggest them. And if it's inconsistent with the way that they draft applications, or have been doing that for 30 or 40 years, you're wasting your time.
Yeah,
and your money.
It's funny you say that. I was just telling somebody a story the other day because I spent time teaching in law school years ago, and I was teaching this patent drafting class, and the students love it. Well, is the way I did it wrong? It's like, okay, well, no. What I kept saying is, no, it's just different. And finally, I got to the point where they say, well, is what I did wrong? Is yes, it's wrong. Well, what's wrong? Well, it's not the way I do it. And I told you, so I started telling them at the beginning of the class, year after year, is I'm the senior partner, you're the associate. That means you have to please me.
Yeah.
I'm going to teach you how to do this my way. Now, ultimately, when you graduate and you're doing it yourself, you'll figure out but your first job or two or three are going to be for somebody like me who's going to want it their way.
That's right.
And you're going to have to deliver that. And then along the way, you'll figure out what your style is. And then when you get the opportunity to be the lead, you do whatever you want.
There you go.
But it's wrong because I told you to do it differently.
Yeah.
And because I can't have a class of 30 people and that every one of them doing it a different way and learn 30 different ways and determine, well, is that good? Is that not good? Or whatever. And, but with AI, I think they can have a tool that anybody with any different style can use it.
That's right. That's right. And enhance your style. Use that tool to enhance your style, not force a specific approach, but enhance the way that you are comfortable with drafting applications in a way that allows you to be more efficient and spend more time on those more important matters.
Yeah.
So that's, we're working with teams now to do that, actually developing part of a beta test, a closed beta test, to develop a suite of tools. So, not just a single tool to help patent draft, but looking at the entire IP process from start to finish, from the, early stages of innovation through prosecution into monetization, and simplify that process using AI. And again, not for speed, but to ensure that claim is going to withstand that one-on-one challenge and will not be, when they assert it, case won't be dismissed because of some 12B motion, failure to state a claim because it was ineligible subject matter.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, to the extent that you can, and I know everything that patent attorneys work on is always confidential, at least right up until the patent issues with your name on it.
Yeah.
Not as the inventor, but your name as the attorney. What interesting stuff, generally speaking, are you seeing clients work on in either the software generally space or the AI space that gets you really excited?
So that's actually an easy answer. So I mentioned before, I'm a bit of a adrenaline junkie, and even at my age, I don't know if you follow cars. So I just sold my Jeep Trackhawk that for combustion engines is perhaps the fastest SUV on the road outside of a Lamborghini. And so I am really into automobiles. My son just bought a Tesla a couple of weeks ago, and so we both, it's I think a Model S with autonomous driving capabilities, regenerative braking, and the use of AI in that technology fascinates me. The fact that he can put it in a mode where he and I can sit and talk, and it drives itself, and he can park it, and it will, automatically or autonomously maintain the temperature of that vehicle so it's comfortable once he gets in. Trucks that can navigate, and the transmissions are programmable so that they know the terrain, can downshift into the proper gear. Autonomous vehicles, and that's one of our clients is in that space. It fascinates me. I love driving and driving fast, but that technology fascinates me.
Yeah, no, that's a great technology, and it's interesting because Ray Millian, a friend of mine, he was chief IP counsel for Volvo for a while, and he came and he spoke at one of our events and on software. Yeah. And one of the things, he was at Volvo at the time that he came, and he said, because Ray, and he also writes an article every year, he updates it for us, that about what percentage of innovations that are in patent applications at the USPTO are software related. And it's striking that how many are, and yet we still don't seem to have a sensible test for 101 in that space. But what he said is the only thing that identifies a pothole from a 3-year-old is software. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the car will drive over the pothole, but will not drive over the 3-year-old. And he said the way that we do that is with software. Yeah. And that's an enormously useful invention. Right? It is. Particularly if you're a parent of a 3-year-old, right? Yeah. And yet we have this idea that, not we, you and me, but many people have this idea, software, anybody could have done it. Well, yeah. If anybody could have done it, why aren't you doing it? Look, most of these judges wouldn't know how to write a line of code.
That's right.
And so it's just shocking to me, software, anybody can do it. No, as it turns out, not anybody can do it. And it irritates the hell out of me because in Alice, in the first 3 minutes of the oral argument, they were asked a couple times, I think it was Justice Kennedy came right out and he said, so this is the type of thing that a college student over a weekend could have coded. And the answer that was given was yes. And it's like, no, no. Even if a college kid could have written the basic code over a week, there's what about security? What about reliability? What about, there's a long. So I always talk when we watch these spy shows and stuff. Like the smoothing algorithms. They're trying to smooth the picture to find out who's really there and everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's the type of stuff that we learned on. Is smoothing algorithms, right? Well, we learned on a little tiny slice of the smoothing algorithm, and we didn't learn on how to do facial recognition.
Yeah.
So the fact that we kind of understand how that works and what you're going on and, all the adjacencies and what you're trying to do and pull does not mean that a college kid could do something as complicated as facial recognition.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of people that convince themselves of a lot of things, it seems. And what do your clients say? I mean, why are they getting patents? Is it the business decision? Is it for investment? Is it for what's driving them to even go into this kind of uncertain space?
I think it's a combination of all of those. Now, years ago, even maybe 5 or 10 years ago, the features that, for example, in the auto industry, the features that distinguish one car from another, is the amount of power. Was it electric windows? Well, I'm dating myself a little bit now. Was it electric windows or roll down windows? Those sorts of things. But now, it's all of the distinctions are based on software. Does this one? How well can it adapt to your style? How easily can you take your cell phone and your contacts and integrate that and your driving style into that automobile? This is all software driven stuff, and so you mentioned earlier that our jobs are going to be around. I think protecting, writing robust software applications is getting increasingly difficult because every application has some element of software, and so those early tests, or Alice and Mayo and Enfish. If we're going to help them protect those innovations, it's more important now that we know whether it fails the first step of that test. Is this protectable subject matter? Is it abstract? Is it a judicial exception? There's no way around knowing that stuff.
Yeah.
And if our clients are going to assert those patents, are going to use them for anything and add value, we have to have a way to at least increase the probability that it's going to withstand that challenge, that post-grant challenge or district court challenge 5 years from now.
So electrical and computer engineers rule the world. That's what you're saying, right?
They do indeed.
Yeah. It's funny. We never really get past that in college, right? The rivalry between the different disciplines. But Ted, this was just a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you coming out and having it with me. Before we wrap up, though, is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with here today?
I'd like to extend my thanks to you because I've followed your site over the years, and it is one of I called. Hopefully, you'll take this as a compliment. My wife was talking to me about where I was heading today, and I said that Gene is the Joe Rogan of the patent geek world, and I rely on your forum to stay updated and figure out what all of my former colleagues. I've been in the business long enough now that and it's a small world. Ray and I were both associates at Stern Kessler, and we stay in contact today. You and I probably know a lot of the same people, and
no doubt.
And the forum of your website and your podcast is how we stay connected. Yeah. So
thanks. I mean, I'm a Joe Rogan fan. I like Joe Rogan a lot, and so I don't try and necessarily model after him, but everybody knows what he does, and I think he's being thought of as the patent version of Joe Rogan. That's sort of the goal, really. That was the goal, is and I appreciate that compliment very much. And it is he's a UFC guy, commentator, and he's got a black belt, second, third, or fourth, whatever degree, black belt in jiu-jitsu. I have a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. So maybe that's the secret sauce here. I don't know, but thank you, Ted. I really appreciate that compliment.
I appreciate it, and thank you for reaching out and giving me the opportunity.